Welcome back to another video. This is part 3 of creating our player dev helper. Today we'll work on creating the database table for our system. So let's get started. First off, let me just close SQL. So open SQL. Here you can enter your login for your database. Hit open. You're now inside your database. So we will be since our system has something to do with the characters, we want to create it under the AzerothCore_characters. So what you want to do here is first I need to close my servers. That's important. So now right click on the AzerothCore characters, hit create new table, and now you have a new table you are creating. Here, always call this something like, or you can choose the name, it doesn't really matter, so as long as you know what it does and why you have it. What I do normally is that I prefix it with the name. So that would be player dev helper underscore and then character system. But let's actually just call it player dev helper system. But normally you would not name it in uppercase, so player dev helper underscore system. I like to split up the system, so I just do an underscore. Comments, it's optional, but I would always want to write something here, so I will just tell myself what this table is for. This table is used for player dev helper system. Now we know what it's for. So now we need to create the columns. So first off, we want the GUID. So this is the player's ID that we are using. So you just hit enter, make sure the data type is int, and this allow null. Never allow null for this, because you can't really be added as a player if it's null. That shouldn't happen. Next, let's create let me think for a second. Let's create the what is called dev count. So that's dev underscore count, or you can also just call it dev count, but I like to make where it would have been a space, you can make an underscore, because you can't use spaces in the database columns or tables. So dev count is also just an int, and this, what you want to do here is basically go over to the default, no default, set this to custom text and set it to 0. So that means this will automatically be 0 when it's added. So when a new user is added, you don't have to in the code tell this to be 0 when it's added. It's automatically 0. And actually let's just allow null on this, because these could be null if you wanted to, but the GUID cannot be null, because that's really important to actually find the player. Next, we will, for this tutorial series, we will just add, so you have 4 stages of rewards. So what we need to do now is create the thing you do, like when you want to make sure a player, let's say your first reward is at 2 times. So if you die, the player dies twice, they get like a little amount of gold. Then we don't want that to keep happening. So we don't want it to be like they can just go in and die again. That wouldn't really be awesome or cool, because people could just cheat the system. So what you would do is actually create each of you, or you can create it where it's like a list or an array of numbers, but to make this beginner friendly, we'll just make it simple and create 4 new columns. So the first one is reward has_reward 1, and then we'll basically just keep going here, and we want to set that to null, 0, sorry, I mean 0. Okay, and allow null on that one, doesn't matter. And now let's create 3 more. So has_reward 2 and has_reward 3 and has_reward 4. You could make this system without needing to set these. But right now, like, we could just go in and don't need these. We could just make sure that you can only get it once, which is basically what we are doing. But for my personal preference, and because I think it's the best practice, we create the tables to have a check if the user actually has already gotten this. If people somehow figure out a way to cheat the system, then you have a safeguard in place to stop them from actually cheating the system, because it has reward you can't do anything about because it's on the database. Normally if we didn't have a check, or if you already had gotten the reward, you could somehow cheat the system if you found an exploit, let's say. So now we have all our columns, and as you can see, we already got everything. So let's click off it, and here it says save modified table player dev helper underscore system, say yes, and now it will run it through everything and actually create it. So now we have our table here, and we have all our dev counts and such. We have the GU ID, dev count, has reward 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's basically the start of everything here. So now let's minimize this. We are basically done inside that one now. So now let's head over to our database. So open the database here, the player dev helper underscore database we made. And first off, we want to check if the user exists in the database. So let's call this does player exist in database, and the way we want to find them is actually via the GUID as we made in the database. Next thing, we want to have a variable that holds the player found and the data. So when you run through something in a database, what it does is that, let's say it just finds, let's say as here, you can only be in this table once. So if we had 10 characters here, we would only be here once, like each GUID is here once, and that's it. So that when we run this code we are writing, we select the column. So let me find something to show you. So here, this is a perfect example. You can see the GUID. So here's 10, 9, 8, 3. So what happens is when we run through, if we actually had the code run through this table called characters, and we said we want the GUID of 10, it would select all of these columns, and then we can actually get the data of actually health or power 1 or so, and so on. So that's what we are setting up right now. So let's go back to our table here, just so we have it ready. Minimize again. And here we want to hold the player we found. So player found. This is just a variable so we can access the data. You set this equal to, and now here comes the bit tricky part. That is, we need to go under and say jar db query. What this is, let me show you real fast. Under here. So if you go to the documentation, you say jar db, and you see here there are different types. So there's one here called a query. That's when you get something, like if you take something from the database. I'll just open it in another tab so we can look at it in a few seconds. So here is the one we are using at the moment. So you can see here, the results is actually or player found. We just called it player found instead of results. And what it gives us is it returns back all the data. But this jar db query is basically used for when you want to like get something. Let's say you want to save something or update something, you would use the jar db execute. And here you can see in a little example where they execute delete from and then the table. So here let's head back in so we don't get confused. And now let's write the next line. So that would be, we have it here, and now we need to write our SQL query. So let's start. So we want to select from select GUID. Sorry. We want to select the GUID, the def underscore counter or count. Sorry, this is important that it's the same as the fields inside or the columns inside your database. And we want to get the pass reward 1, and basically copy this one, comma, comma, and comma. Here, then 4, 3, and 2. And then right now we are just saying we want to take, like we want to get this, but this command doesn't know where to get this from. So what we do now is we write from, and then we write the table name. So that would say player dev, what we call it, dev helper, right? Player dev helper underscore system, helper underscore system. And now you do another space. And now we say we want to select only this data where the GUID is equals to or argument GUID. So here we say where, and this needs to be uppercase, the select from and where, and then you make a space and you say GUID. GUID is because that's what our field here is called. Next, you make a space again, set equal sign, and a space again. And now outside of the quote, double quote, you make a space, dot dot, and here you say to number, and you put in the GUID argument. We'll close it off. Now, what we can do is now we say if player, if not player found. So if it's nothing, or player found, colon get row count. And that's a function, so we need to close it off, and then equals 0, then end. Now, if this is null, so if this is not found and row count is 0, so get row count gets the, so this is basically a list with the rows found. So if it's 0, then we know it didn't find any player with the GUID. So that means we would say print to the server window. This is basically just for testing, but it's also always a good idea to print player not found and close it off. And then we would say else to, like, if it's not found, we print this. Otherwise, if it's found, we want to actually print it. So we could say print player was found. Now we want to return the player found, because we want to give this back, this value or this variable, we want to give it back to the function of, the function calling it. So if we called it over here, we want to get this data back. Now this function is done. And I see this video is already 17 minutes long. So I think it's best if I wait for tomorrow with the rest of this. And then we can actually get started with creating the characters in the database. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider leaving a like and a subscribe if you liked it. See you.